BloodStream Journeys is produced by BloodStream Media and made possible exclusively by BioMarin. Hi there, I'm Heather Robb, and this is Journeys, a monthly podcast from BloodStream Media that features the stories of individuals within the bleeding disorders community. This year has been... where to begin? Words are hard to find, honestly. There's just not a simple way to sum up 2020. But one thing I can say for sure, it has been such a pleasure to share this podcast with you all, to get to amplify the journeys of so many within this community. It's been an honor, honestly, to host and produce this podcast, a journey for me when you get right down to it. So it's with a heavy heart that I say this will actually be my final episode of Journeys. But never fear. Journeys will continue next month with two awesome new hosts, Avra Friedman and Drama Del Rosario, bringing you more of the compelling personal narratives that you have come to love. And I'll probably pop in to say hello from time to time. So, it's the last month of 2020, and we have a very special episode for you. Our theme this month is The Life I Choose. So often with a chronic condition, it can feel like nothing is within our control. That can be challenging, physically, mentally, emotionally. Our stories this month dive into those challenges, as well as the empowerment that comes by taking charge of the things we can control, by reminding ourselves of the ways we can live the life we choose. Our first contributor is Preston Boling. For the first 9 years of his life, Preston and his parents lived without a diagnosis. It was a painful and difficult time, one that Preston has really blocked out for the most part. But now, he wouldn't trade his journey for an easier one. Here's Preston.
Hi, my name is Preston Boling. I was diagnosed with hemophilia at the age of 9. I know what you're thinking. You went 9 years without factor? And the answer is yes. In fact, my family and I had zero knowledge of what factor even was, let alone hemophilia. When thinking of what Preston Boling's story is, I quickly noticed there's a large gap from my childhood where I think I subconsciously blocked out the majority of memories. I believe it's because, quite frankly, from the moment I was born till I was 9 or 10, it was filled with traumatic events and lots of unknown pain. There were countless doctor's appointments where I left with less hope than I had arrived with. And though everything seems difficult to recollect, I vividly remember a few doctor's appointments that were pretty scarring. And once I realized I couldn't remember the majority of those childhood memories, I asked my mom for some help. And she said, thinking back on Preston's early years truly breaks my heart. He was always fussy, his skin was extremely pale, and his eyes were constantly sunken. My mom went on to tell me about one Sunday morning when she woke up. I was about 15 months old. I was not wanting to wake up for the day, which was pretty unusual for me and probably most kids because I, like most kids, was counting down the seconds until I could get out of my crib. But on this particular day, I did not want to get up. She took me out of my crib and put me in my high chair and tried to feed me, but I could barely keep my eyes open and I was refusing to eat, so she just decided to lay me back down while she got ready for church. My mom eventually, she got me ready and took me to church, and on this one Sunday, my grandma decided to come to church with us, and at the moment she saw me, she was shocked and immediately knew there was something wrong. Both of them couldn't really put their finger on it. I was barely conscious, my skin was white as a ghost, and my mom told me she vividly remembered that my ears had no color. It was almost like you could see right through them. My mom then had to take me to our local urgent care, where in the past, multiple times, she had been questioned for child abuse, from the hematomas on my head And when we arrived, it was immediate to the doctor that there was something wrong. They took tests, and without even saying anything, after seeing the results, he was on the phone with the hospital and called the pediatric specialist to meet us at the hospital. When asking my mom to describe me, she said I was lifeless. And the medical team began with x-rays and asking so many questions my poor mom didn't have the answers to. And the pediatric specialist called Primary Children's Hospital in Utah, and after conversing with the doctors about how to handle our situation, they decided I needed to be in Utah immediately. The University of Utah's hospital sent their jet to our local airport to get us there faster, which is about a four-hour trip from Idaho. And upon arrival, I was transported to the airport in an ambulance, and 7 long days later, I was leaving the hospital with color in my face and a cheesy smile, as my mom put it. Never quite sure of exactly what happened and why. I can't even begin to fathom that as a parent. The doctors cauterized the lining in my stomach, infused 5 units of blood, ran multiple tests, and gave me medication for bleeding. And for the time being, it seemed to fix the problem. It saved my life. And over the next 6 months, I continued to heal and gain strength. My mom said she looks back on that experience and often wonders how I spent a week in a state-of-the-art facility with a hemophilia treatment center and never got diagnosed with hemophilia. Knowing I was so close to a rather normal childhood is kind of hard to believe. I continued to struggle throughout my youth, often tired and too low on energy to participate in normal kid activities. My parents continued to have me checked whenever I was fatigued, as my mom remembers me bleeding from my ears, having endless nosebleeds for hours on end, multiple hematomas, and continually having a bruised body with goose eggs. And going back on one of those scarring doctor's appointments, at the age of 8, I started experiencing what we know now as a joint bleed in my hip. I remember waking up in the night with excruciating pain, not being able to walk, collapsing in mid-stride from pain during the day, and my parents ended up taking me to an orthopedic surgeon who felt it was necessary to drain the fluid from my hip. He took me into the surgical room, fully awake, being held down by my dad and the nurses and several doctors. And the main orthopedic surgeon then proceeded to try and extract the fluid with a long needle with no success. My mom said she could hear me scream in agony from the waiting room. I remember seeing my dad's tears flow down his face. And this is a man who does not cry, as he watched a blood vessel pop on the side of my head from pressure of screaming. And long story short, we were never billed for that procedure. Thankfully, the hip bleed and the pain that came with it eventually disappeared, and so did the scarring doctor's appointments, all thanks to my little brother Peyton. He was 3 years old when he went in to have his tonsils removed, and in the span of 2 weeks, he had been taken back into surgery 5 different times because each time he bled more than the last. And eventually he was sent to Primary Children's Hospital in Utah, and they ran multiple blood tests and discovered he had hemophilia. And my mom told me that she remembers the moment the doctor told her and thinking, what the heck is hemophilia? How do you say that? But after we got more details on everything, everyone instantly knew that is exactly what Preston has. After I was diagnosed with hemophilia, I remember hearing the doctors tell me everything I can't do, which at the time was everything that I loved doing. Playing football, playing basketball, playing baseball. And in that moment in my life, I was forced to grow up. My dreams of playing in the NFL or the NBA were crushed, absolutely crushed. I had to start thinking about my future and taking care of myself so I had a future, which what 10-year-old boy wants to do that? I remember I had to come up with excuses to why I wasn't on the football team and keeping a strong face at school until I got home, and then I would just break down and cry, asking my mom why I was the only one that couldn't play, asking my mom why me. And once I faced the fact that I can never play football, I got over that and I focused on what I could actually do. And if you know me pretty well, you know I can be persuasive, and that's exactly what the 10-year-old Preston did. He went to the doctors and convinced them to let him play baseball. So me and the doctor, we came up with a process that I would follow to take care of my body and allow me to still be a kid. A huge part of who I am today is how I was forced to grow up. I had to learn what hemophilia was. I had to learn how to handle it. And while learning these things, I realized I may have hemophilia, but it absolutely does not define who I am as a person. Realizing there's so much more to life than playing professional sports, it opened my eyes to the real world when many kids weren't exposed to that. I've been asked before, if you could choose a life with or without hemophilia, what would you choose? And my answer is I would choose hemophilia over and over again. Don't get me wrong, hemophilia is hard. It is difficult, it is lonely, but it's been one of the biggest blessings in my life. It has brought me lifelong friends. It has brought my family closer together. It is proof week in and week out that I can do hard things. And it has helped me become the man who I am today. Once I realized the fact that I have hemophilia, I stopped investing in the things I could not do. And I realized how much more I could do in this life. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from April Driesse. April and her family have been through a lot, juggling many chronic conditions as well as other life challenges. April has taken the power back by speaking out about those difficulties and choosing to connect with others. Here's April.
I come from a family of bleeders. I myself have mild hemophilia B, but that's only one of the several conditions that I live with. I have Addison's disease, lupus, fibromyalgia, severe rheumatoid arthritis, chronic back and neck pain, osteoarthritis, osteoarthritic joints, and joint disease. I take about 30 medications a day. On top of that, I also have mental health diagnoses of major depression, borderline personality disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, severe generalized anxiety, ADHD, and cyclothymic dysfunction. I'm an advocate for awareness in women bleeders, but I also feel there's a huge mental health component in the community that needs to be focused more on because hemophilia is a lifelong chronic condition. It impacts us mentally. Mental health should be the forefront of treatment because the why me feeling and the depression is very, very real. I want to be honest about my mental health struggles for a moment because I want to let others know who have dealt with similar things that they are definitely not alone. There are others out there who are also struggling like you. I tried to take my own life in 1999, 2006, 2007, and as recent as January of this year. When my house caught fire and my world came crashing down, I became homeless with kids and I felt like my life was out of control. I felt empty, alone, like I had nothing but problems, was different, no one would understand me, and I spent a week in the psych ward trying to get myself back together. I'm happy that I did because I have 2 wonderful kids to take care of, and I'd love to tell you about them. My son Lucius is 3.5 years old. He has mild hemophilia B, but he bleeds more like a moderate. He also has a rare disease called hypogammaglobulinemia. Say that 10 times fast. He gets weekly infusions of SCIG Hizentra. SCIG is subcutaneous immunoglobulin. It keeps him able to function and stay out of the hospital. Think Bubble Boy, but to a lesser extent. His first year of life was really rough because when I was pregnant with him, the geneticist convinced me that he didn't have hemophilia based on my factor levels. When he had his first bleed and he was diagnosed, I was completely and utterly devastated. I broke down and asked God why. I cried and I sobbed. A month later, he was also diagnosed with hypogamma, a rare immune deficiency, and that requires infusions too. Then there's my beautiful, lovely 11-year-old baby girl. She's so sweet, she's loving, she's caring and kind. But she also struggles, and man, I really wish I could take that struggle away from her. Her diagnoses are mild hemophilia B, and she also has a platelet dysfunction on top of that. She has autism, ADHD, major depression, generalized anxiety, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, and reactive attachment disorder. I struggle with the guilt I feel as a carrier. The fact that I have to hold my son down while he's screaming at me every week. No, Mama, stop. Why, Mom? Stop hurting me. Every single week during infusion, and it breaks me. Because the reality is, I gave this to them. Not their dad, but me. And I have to live with that guilt every single day of my life. Mental health conditions run in our family, but I find that they're especially prone in the chronic medical conditions community and the mental health conditions community. Obviously, they play off of one another and they impact each other greatly. For example, I'm a type 2 diabetic, and when my blood sugar is high and I'm dealing with a flare-up or in pain, I'm irritable, moody, and want to be left alone. When my blood sugar is normal, I'm happy and loving. There's a direct connection between these things. And it's like that with any physical chronic condition because the physical chronic condition plays off of the mental health condition. That's why I think in the rare disease and chronic pain community, we need to focus more on the mental health aspect. We need to do it because these things are interconnected. We as a family are connected in counseling and therapies, treatments, on medication, and we're better off because of that. But there's a lot of stigma behind mental health. Even though we're also involved in NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, there is still not a large amount of support, and the community faces a large amount of stigma. I'm always looking for more ways to get involved and to share my story. That way I can give hope and understanding to others who also might be struggling. Because I know what it's like on all ends. As a mother, as a parent, as a caregiver, as a carrier, and as someone who lives with multiple chronic conditions and mental health challenges. I try to use everything I have gone through with my own health to become a better advocate for myself, for my kids, and for others in the community.
Lastly, we're going to hear from John Christen. The last few years have brought a lot of changes for John, including the birth of his son. But with the challenges have come an incredible sense of gratitude and even grace. Here's John.
Hello, my name is John Christen. I am a father and primary caregiver to my 18-month-old son. I am also a severe hemophiliac, factor 8. Like any first-time father, the birth of my son was and continues to be a thrilling and humbling experience. A year and a half later, in the memory of returning home from the hospital and staring into my son's tiny sleeping body, not yet a week old, makes me laugh. For the past several years, I was in control, soundly and solidly. Then my grip loosened, and I was lost adrift in a sea of unknowns. I didn't know what to expect. I felt unprepared. I kept staring at this tiny human, thinking, what do I do now? During the past 18 months, my priorities rearranged. The copious amounts of free time I had, even while working a full-time job, disappeared. I am no longer free to do as I please when I please. My life is regimented, controlled by the circadian rhythms of a baby. Such a lack of control over my daily activities has left me with the need to confront what is essential in my life. Before I had a child, I was inefficient and undisciplined. Seconds would trickle and drain away, and that was okay. Becoming a parent has taught me to meticulously manage my time. It has instilled a sense of urgency into my life, since it is difficult to put off a task until tomorrow, when tomorrow has no time to spare. Before my child was born, I was a public school science teacher. Afterwards, my 7-year teaching career went on hold as I transformed into a stay-at-home dad, or SAD, and cared full-time for a small infant. After 3 months, my wife's maternity leave ended, and she returned to her job and I was left alone at home. I am an introvert by nature and enjoy having time with myself, but this was something else altogether. As it turns out, a baby sleeps a lot, and in the beginning my SAD job afforded me ample opportunity to sit and think. Additionally, while awake, an infant still does not do much, isn't very interactive, and still leaves the caregiver devoid of conversation. During wake time or nap time, it did not matter. I was left with a lot of time inside my head. Even now, especially now, the past several months have given me a ridiculous amount of time to think and reflect. At this point, I am tired of having so much time with myself, which is something I think we can all relate to. Some of the time inside my head, I think of my own mortality. I have learned through talking to other new parents that feelings of one's own mortality is universal when confronting the birth of the next generation. It is simply impossible to not think of one's own death while clutching the tiny hands of their own progeny. However, for me, it's something more. I think of the medication that keeps me alive, the hoops I've jumped through to attain and keep health insurance, and my own personal suffering if I were to go without that medication. My new SAD job required me to switch insurance to my wife's plan. This was a stressful as well as an exciting time. As an adult hemophiliac, I've been responsible for maintaining my own health insurance, which has meant holding jobs that offered solid coverage. I have enjoyed teaching and am generally happy with joining the profession, but most of why I taught was for the health benefits, and the job security that ensured those benefits continued. Now I had the ability to try something different while keeping medication flowing through my wife's insurance plan. I looked forward to my new romanticized life of playground playdates, library story times, and adventures at the park. Instead, I became absorbed with insurance issues. My wife's insurer sent me on an endless search for a specialty pharmacy that was in-network and could fill my factor prescription. Weeks went by, my factor supply dwindled, and insurance was still confused on which pharmacy would supply factor. I thought my dream was ending, and I rehearsed asking my old principal for my job back, just for the insurance. I made peace with my idyllic life disappearing. The HTC stepped in and resuscitated my dreams. They found an in-network pharmacy that is covered by insurance. I have not had any problems since. I am fortunate and grateful to have such wonderful advocates in my life. As I continue to watch my child grow and develop, my mind returns to my mother. Through my own child, I have found a greater appreciation for her. My mother is a warrior. She is fierce and strong. She is nurturing and soft. My mother has sacrificed so that I may succeed. I don't remember my early years. I don't remember much before the age of 7, but I do know that I began self-infusing at that age and haven't looked back. But before accepting responsibility and infusing myself, my mother handled my care and advocated on my behalf. I owe her as well as the HTC staff an unpayable debt of gratitude. As I watch my child play and tumble and fall and bang and bruise, I can't imagine the overwhelming burden my mother faced in raising me. I've heard the stories, infusing a squirmy 3-year-old in a high chair, holding a butterfly needle in one hand while attempting to distract me with a teddy bear in the other. I know about the countless ER visits from my youth, sometimes for injury, other times because after countless needle pokes, she just couldn't find the vein. The conversations with insurance companies and pharmacies, the communicating with school nurses and administrators for a school treatment plan and storage of factor in the teacher's lounge. I look at my child and wonder if I will be as strong and courageous as my mother. I am grateful that, as of yet, I have not been tested. I was talking to a friend the other day. He has a child a few months older than mine. I've known this man a long time and he knows about my condition. He mentioned that since the birth of his child he often thinks of the things that my mother went through raising me. His comments gave me pause. Perhaps hemophilia is a gift. Maybe through sharing our burden we encourage people to reflect and treat others with empathy and compassion. It is now 18 months later and I am enjoying the experience of watching an infant develop into a toddler. I am adjusting to a new normal. Raising a tiny human is exhausting and difficult, yet despite the hardships, we are thriving. Yes, my patience is tried every day, especially while reading the same picture book 5 times in a row, or cleaning up countless meals that were thrown to the floor, or needing 15 minutes to walk a few hundred yards to the park across the street. Still, my life is enriched beyond belief. I have a little me that loves to snuggle on my lap and read books. He is curious and attentive. His eyes are full of wonder. To him, the world is an open book waiting to be explored, and I am allowed a front row view. Children bring out the appreciation for the beauty of life. The admission price is love and nurturing care. Thank you for listening.
This episode of BloodStream Journeys was written by Heather Robb, featuring real-life stories from Preston Boling, April Driesse, and John Christen. This episode was produced by Rob Bradford and Greg Holtzman, audio editing by Colby Crow, sound design and post-production support by Joshua Sterling Bragg, distribution and engagement by Avra Friedman, art and promotion by Christina Newhart and Ryan Gielan. BloodStream Journeys is executive produced by Patrick James Lynch and Ryan Gielan. My deepest thanks to all of BloodStream Media for allowing me to be a part of this podcast and the incredible, inspiring contributors we've featured over the last year. You have all taught me so much, and I look forward to joining the audience as I pass the torch to Avra and Drama. If you want to reflect on your journey to this moment right here, and tell your story, visit us at bloodstreammedia.com/mystory. We have a simple form. Write your story in it. Or tell us a little about yourself and what you want to write about, even if you don't yet know how. And click Submit. We'll be in touch, and together we'll get your story told. BloodStream Journeys would not be possible without the incredible ongoing support of BioMarin, so we say thank you to BioMarin for their vision and generosity and all the ways they empower the bleeding disorders community to learn, heal, and grow through self-expression. Thank you, BioMarin. Other BloodStream podcasts include the community touchstone, the BloodStream Podcast. BloodStream is an entertaining and informative podcast hosted by Natalie and Patrick Lynch and provides a 360-degree look at the bleeding disorders community through news, interviews, and informed opinionating on the topics that matter most. Also, there will be a bunch of new shows and podcasts coming throughout 2020 from BloodStream Media. So be sure to visit www.bloodstreammedia.com for all of the shows produced by us. Or you can search BloodStream Media anywhere podcasts are distributed, downloaded, streamed, or watched. Happy listening.